Alright, Ontra fans, so it's Ken Colwood from QuickFix.io coming back at you with another Freebie Friday. And in this installment, I want to talk a little bit about the need to build extra blocks for content layouts that are mobile specific. And if you've ever tried to build one of these types of layouts, you'll know exactly what I mean. This looks great on desktop, right? So you have the text on the left, image on the right, then you flip it around, right? So this is great for showing off features and things like that with a nice modern feel to it. The problem comes when you are not on a desktop, right? So we're just gonna do the Chrome responsive inspector here. And all of a sudden you get down into that range of, let's say, 600 pixels wide, right? And the mobile breakpoint kicks in, and all of a sudden you have text on top, image on the bottom, then you have image on top, text on the bottom, then you flip back around to text on top, image on the bottom. And that obviously is not the desired effect, right? So what would you normally do? So there are a couple of different approaches to this. The first thing that you could do is you could clone this entire block, make this block the desktop version, and then swap the order around on the mobile version. That's one option. You could also make each of these individual rows their own blocks and have that stack things up the way you want it to. Obviously, you would just need to have one block for this one because it's going to stack the proper way on mobile, and one block for this one. And you'd have two blocks here, right? So we're talking about 1, 2, another one of this, 3, and then 4 blocks, and then 5. So you have the read more button. So now we have 5 blocks if we went that route, right? So that is not a deal breaker for a lot of people because most people have, short landing pages or whatever. And so having a couple of extra blocks is no big deal. Now, the problem really comes in when you start to have long-form sales pages and you're already sitting at, 10, 12, 13 different blocks. All of a sudden, the editor starts to slow down. Maybe you have some publishing errors. And also, to be quite honest, if you have a page that's long, that is that long, a lot of times the images aren't compressed. And so the page speed, the load time, might be less than desirable. So this video is all about how to get this type of effect that is going to work across both mobile and desktop without having to worry about creating a whole bunch of different blocks. So let's jump into the editor and let's take a look at the setup for the first solution, right? So here we have the default behavior block. And now we have method number 1. It is a CSS Direction Switch. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this white background version. If we come back here to our browser and we enable that responsive look again, right? We can scroll down and we can see that in the white version, we have exactly what we expected. Obviously, this spacing is something we'd have to adjust with the padding and all that, but that's the built-in features, right? And if we go to the editor, we can see that all we have is one single block. So how do we do that? Well, as the title suggests, we use CSS for this. So we jump into the custom code and we take a look at method number 1, CSS Direction Switch. And all we've done is we've said, okay, let's set up some conditions for if the screen is mobile. And so basically we're saying if the screen is anything narrower than a portrait mode iPad, then we want to apply this CSS to this particular column, or this particular row, I should say, right? And so we went ahead and just said in block 0ED5, which is the white block here, we want to apply CSS of column reverse to the third row, right? And this is the third row, not the fourth row, because it's probably easier to see here. Because when we're looking at this, we have one row which has the headline and the logo, 2 with Jenna Jones, 3 with Willie Walters. So we are just adding in this little CSS to say, hey, when you get to the third row, we want you to reverse the stacking order if it is a mobile device. And if it's on a normal device, we want you to do the normal stacking order, which is why we throw in this inherit here. Just so that if somebody were on a desktop and for whatever reason, they decided to go from 600 pixels and they wanted to scroll it up, then it would go ahead and pop back to the expected behavior, right? So that's why we have that second line in there. Now, as I'm doing this responsive push, you can see that this CSS methodology isn't perfect, right? It's not perfect because it would require one more, maybe another line to go into these in-between types of situations, right? Not the end of the world if you know that you're playing with devices in this space here. So we're looking at somewhere around that anything between 600 and looks like 768 is, 767 is going to be kind of in this little in-between stage. Now there's a simple fix for that. The first fix, if you're going to go with method number 1, is to go ahead and apply a different breakpoint within the actual page width settings of Ontraport. And you would just come here to the mobile width and you would just say, okay, well, actually, I want you to kick this into the mobile version when it's on at 767. And we'll go ahead and publish that and we'll test and we'll see. So there are some options you can do with that, right? You could either adjust the CSS to account for those particular situations with the in-between figures, the in-between widths, if you know that you're working with a lot of devices like that, or if some of the newer iPhones and Samsungs and all that are working in those in-between stages, or you can just go ahead and adjust that mobile breakpoint, and you can see it has the same effect, that now it goes ahead and just applies the mobile version with the proper stacking right out of the gate. All right, so that's option number 1. Or method number 1 for fixing this need for extra blocks. Now, method number 2 is actually something that is probably going to resonate with more people because it's not only useful in this particular case, but it's useful for any time when you are creating, let's call them more complex layouts, and you want mobile specific things to happen in certain columns. So let me explain. This is one single block, and this particular block is broken up into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 different columns. Okay, so method number 2, what it does is it says, okay, let's go ahead and create this duplicate of this content, but let's not use separate blocks for this, but instead let's target and make these 2 columns device specific. All right, and by device specific, if we jump into the custom code here, what we mean is that this method number 2 means that if the screen is mobile, we're going to hide columns 16 and 17 and show columns 31 and 33. And all that means is that 16 and 17 are these 2, right? So on mobile, we're going to hide these 2 and we're going to show these 2. So that way, when it is in mobile mode at that 767 breakpoint that we just defined, it's going to not show this, it's going to show this, and therefore the stacking is going to happen the way it should, right? Because it's going to stack exactly like this one and this one. And by the same token, we want to define if it is larger than that, and the reason why we have to put this if it's larger than that is because if somebody, again, is going back and forth between the under 767 and above 767, then we want it to pop back into place. And it's just the opposite, right? It's going to hide these 2 and show these 2. Okay. And as we scroll down here, we can see that in action, right? So this is the original. And as we scroll down, it pops over to the larger one, right? So at 767, it hides the original and shows the mobile-only version. So like I said, if you are doing this, back and forth stacking, this is a good use case for having column-specific CSS, or not in this case, hiding and showing specific columns based on the device size. But you can extrapolate this and apply it to other situations, because we can not only target just the columns, but we could actually target specific elements. So let's say, for example, that you wanted to have a different headline, right? Not just a different size headline, because we can do that with the built-in stuff, the built-in tools. But let's say that you want a literal different headline. Well, instead of Willie Walters, if we said that we want him to be called Walters Willie, well, then we could say on mobile, show Walters Willie, and on desktop, show Willie Walters, right? So you can see how this ability to target specific elements and or specific columns really opens up your ability to design the perfect layout without having to get into building a bunch of duplicate blocks and swapping things around. So I hope that all made sense, and as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please drop them under the video and I'll do my best to get you sorted. And if you'd like to know exactly how ClickFix.io can help you take your Ontraport game to the next level, drop me a private message either on YouTube or Facebook, or feel free to jump over to the website and book a strategy call with one of our experts, and we'll get you taken care of.